All right, we have breaking news out of Ferguson. Officer Darren Wilson is reportedly in talks to resign, but only if he's not indicted by the grand jury. And we could get that answer today. Let's discuss what's going on with that decision, what's going on with the grand jury, and what may come next. We have criminal defense attorney Danny Savalos, and from the CNN Center, attorney and radio host Mo Ivory. Happy Friday to both of you. Let's talk about this first headline here. Mo, if Officer Darren Wilson were to resign, what would that mean to the community, if anything, in your estimation?
Well, it just would be something that would make the supporters of Michael Brown feel like there's a little ounce of some justice, you know, sort of on a community level, because I can't imagine that he would believe, even if he's not indicted, that he could then go back into that community and be a police officer. So, I mean, for the heart, it probably would make Michael Brown supporters feel really good, and it's probably a prudent thing for him to do.
Danny, he could keep it, you know, if he's not indicted especially, he would keep his job, and it would be, the assumption is that he didn't do anything wrong. But what could this mean right now to the grand jury, if anything?
I don't know that it'll make that much of a difference on the grand jury itself, but remember, this is a police officer. He's experienced at testifying, whether or not he was still on the job or not on the job. This is law enforcement knows how to testify in court, whether it's before a grand jury or a petit jury. And again, remember, grand juries are such one-sided affairs. There's no defense attorney. It's the prosecution show. So when we talk of this old saying of a prosecutor could indict a ham sandwich, that's true. But a prosecutor can also not indict a ham sandwich if he is so inclined.
But
I'm not saying that's what's happening here.
Here's something, I get your point. I know that legally it's correct. But Mo, here's what I don't get. Prosecutors don't usually go to a grand jury if they don't want to bring a case. I mean, that you could argue that wouldn't even be ethical. If you take it to the grand jury, it's because you want to make a case, right?
Sure, which then says that if you feel like there is enough evidence for a case, you don't even have to go to the grand jury.
Right.
You can just prosecute yourself. So, you know, that example is exactly right what Danny said, but I think in this situation it gives people a lot of pause, because the prosecutor is actually supposed to be working to find justice for Michael Brown, but in this instance it doesn't necessarily feel that way, and it doesn't necessarily feel like from putting Darren Wilson on the stand. Imagine he goes on the stand, he goes before the grand jury, and he's, like you said, well seasoned in speaking before juries. He knows what he needs to say, but then there's nobody equally with the kind of support on the Michael Brown side to come forward in that manner. You have to wonder, what kind of impact did that have on the grand jury?
We gloss over this too often, so let's give it just a beat of time now, because people are trying to figure out what's going to happen in this grand jury and why, and there's a lot of misinformation, misconceptions going on. One, this prosecutor could have brought charges. He decided not to. He went to the grand jury. Having a witness come forward in the grand jury who is the defendant changes the entire equation. It's very rare. Usually a lawyer like, you know, Danny or you won't put your client anywhere near it because all the rules are skewed towards the prosecutor.
Right.
But this officer gets on the stand. He's there for hours. He takes his entire story, right? That ham sandwich turns into steak and potatoes in terms of, you know, how high bar it is for a grand jury, right?
I think so, but the bottom line is, you know, people during this process have completely lost track of what a grand jury is supposed to mean. As a defense attorney, it's shocking to me that people are saying this grand jury may not indict and that's injustice. As defense attorneys, grand juries almost always do indict. There's such a one-sided affair. The other thing people are saying is, oh, well, this grand jury isn't transparent. We can't see what's going on. Grand juries are designed to be secret. We're not supposed to know what's going on. Otherwise, it would threaten the very process. If you want transparency, if you have a predetermined outcome that you would like in this case, well, then that's not what a grand jury is for. Now, if the prosecution, there's a theory that maybe the prosecution is just putting all the evidence before the grand jury to absolve itself of liability if they come back with a no true bill or no indictment. And maybe that's the case, but you could also look at it as they're trying to put in a high-profile case all the information that the grand jury could possibly look at. And it's true that ultimately, if the grand jury chooses to indict or not indict, that is the grand jury and not the prosecution.
But you have a case that comes down to perception in the moment. For whatever the witnesses say they saw, and you have, before the grand juries, one side of what was perceived in the moment. And that could be very influential on them, and I don't think people are weighing that enough. All right, last question for us to get into today, which is going to be, you know, first of all, if the grand jury says no true bill, we're not indicting, the prosecutor could still charge him.
Absolutely.
If he wanted to.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
But nobody anticipates that, and that's the last point. Mo, you used the word feel. Why does it feel like there's not going to be an indictment? Is that the media portrayal? Is that all the preparations? Is that just the pessimism? Why does it feel that way?
I think it's all of those things. I think it's a combination of all of those things. Certainly the media, certainly the way there's been this preparation has made people feel that there will not be an indictment. And then, of course, the history of, officers being able to, use excessive force and be able to get away with it. Now, of course, this is not about a trial, whether he's, guilty of this or not. It's just whether he should go to trial and face a jury of his peers. But people are just very pessimistic about it. And that doesn't mean that there won't be an indictment. It's just the feeling in the air. We do not know what these 12 people, and only 9 of them have to agree what they will agree on.
Yeah, whether they have a group of 9 or not. Mo Ivory,
exactly.
We're all waiting on the outcome. Danny Cevallos, thank you very much. And remember, it's going to be as much about the response as the findings themselves. We encourage you to look at the PSA from Michael Brown's father, his family, and what they want. And it's nothing about outrage, no matter what happens. So take a look at that. Allison?